You can give everything to your family and still feel like a stranger in your own home. The air in my tiny Atlanta apartment hung heavy, pressing against my chest as I sank into a sagging couch, a chipped mug of chamomile tea trembling in my hand. Outside, the city hummed, cars honking, voices drifting through the cracked window. Inside, my world was still, so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. My phone buzzed on the coffee table, each vibration a needle in my nerves. The screen glowed with names that felt like debts. Mom.
Dad.
Brandon. Again and again, their calls piled up, unanswered. 6 months ago, I walked away from my family's house. No shouting, no slammed doors, just a silence, so deep it swallowed me whole. I packed a faded duffel bag with a few clothes, my old laptop, and a worn notebook where I'd scribbled every penny I saved. The sun dipped low, casting shadows across the porch with its peeling paint, where I used to sit with Mom in the 90s, watching fireflies while she folded laundry during reruns of The Golden Girls. No one looked up from the living room, where the floral couch and dusty VHS tapes sat frozen in time. No one asked where I was going. No one tried to stop me. My parents came from a generation forged by hard times. Dad's stories of dodging the Vietnam War draft, Mom's memories of stretching dollars during the 70s recession. They raised me to believe family came first, that love was shown through duty, not words. For years, I lived that truth. I was the reliable daughter who paid overdue bills, covered Mom's prescriptions, and propped up my brother Brandon's endless fresh starts. I was the fixer, the one who never said no. But one day, I woke up empty, with nothing left for myself. Have you ever given so much that you lost sight of your own reflection? I leaned back, the couch creaking, and let the silence wrap around me like a soft shawl. For the first time in a decade, my name, Emily Ross, felt like mine. 28, a financial analyst with a degree from Georgia State, a woman who once believed hard work would make her seen. I came home after paying Brandon's overdue tuition, again, and no one looked up from their phones, their faces lit by the glow of distraction. The tea had gone cold, its floral scent fading. My phone buzzed, Mom, with her plea. Call back, Emily.
We need you.
Her voice echoed, sharp with guilt. But for once, I didn't answer. I wasn't angry. I was done. I closed my eyes, and a memory flickered. Me at 5, curled on Mom's lap as she read me a story, her threadbare apron smelling of cinnamon and palmolive soap. Those moments were why I held on. But now, in my own space, I felt something new. Freedom. The quiet kind that slips in like light under a locked door, filling the room with possibility. I set the mug down and hung a small watercolor painting on the wall, a $10 flea market find that reminded me of hope. It was the first thing I'd bought just for me, and as I stepped back, my chest felt lighter, like I'd taken a breath after years underwater. Responsibility was my badge of honor. Proof I was good. I didn't see it was a chain, tightening every time I said yes when my heart whispered no. My parents grew up in a world where silence was strength. Dad would talk about the 80s, when factory layoffs left families scrambling, his boots thumping against the porch at 5:12, like clockwork. Mom remembered clipping coupons, saving for a Sears catalog couch, the same floral one still in their living room. They taught me that daughters sacrificed, that family was everything. I carried that lesson like a vow. Those early years weren't all heavy. I remember Sunday dinners, the table crowded with Mom's meatloaf and mashed potatoes, the '78 crock-pot humming in the background. We'd play Monopoly, Brandon always sneaking extra hotels, his laughter filling the room. Dad would lean back, his eyes far away, telling stories of dodging bullets in Vietnam, while Mom hummed old radio tunes, her needle flashing as she embroidered my name on a handkerchief I still keep. Those nights, I felt safe, like we were unbreakable. That's why I held on so long, even when the warmth faded. At 16, I started working, not for pocket money like my friends who bought Nirvana CDs or movie tickets, but because I knew if I didn't take care of myself, no one would. After school, I biked to a pastry shop with a flickering neon sign. I wiped sticky tables, swept crumbs, mopped until my hands ached. Then I biked home in the dark, my legs burning. That's how I bought my first computer, a used model with sticky keys. It's hum a lifeline through homework and dreams. No one asked if I was tired, if I'd eaten. Years later, when Brandon dropped out of art school, Mom said softly, he's sensitive, and opened a credit card for a $2,000 MacBook. I stood in the hallway, clutching a mug of tea, watching her swipe that card. It wasn't the money, it was the ease. Like hope was free for Brandon but a battle for me. My successes were expected. Brandon's failures were brave. He was 4 years older, but I was raising him. I worked through college, juggling internships, night classes, and 2 jobs. My days were a blur of spreadsheets and coffee runs. Brandon drifted, dropping jobs. The boss was too harsh. Dad's refrain. He'll figure it out. When I graduated with honors and landed a job at an Atlanta investment firm, Mom frowned. That's far. Brandon might need the car. I kept quiet, swallowing the hurt to keep the peace. Have you ever stayed quiet to keep the peace, until the silence crushed you? I became their foundation. When the electricity was overdue, Mom texted, "Can you help?" When the fridge hummed its last, Dad promised, "We'll pay you back." I paid for repairs, groceries, insurance. Each withdrawal felt like a piece of me slipping away. I dragged myself home after a 12-hour day to find Brandon on the couch, the old fridge humming. Mom would be cooking in her crock pot, its chipped lid rattling. Dad would retell his story. My son won an art contest in 5th grade. One evening, I stayed late at work, untangling a client's portfolio. My boss emailed, "Great job, Emily." I saved it, my heart swelling. That night, I found a photo, me and Brandon as kids, laughing at a park. The scratchy wool of his jacket made my cheek itch when he hugged me. When had we become strangers? It started with a call I didn't answer. Dad's name lit up my phone as I worked late, the office lights casting shadows across my spreadsheets. His voicemail was tense. "Emily, we're in a bind. The bank's threatening the house. We need help." My stomach twisted, a knot from college days when I'd check my account at 2 a.m., praying it wasn't negative. I transferred $980 that night, canceling a deposit on a studio with big windows and a view of Atlanta's skyline. It's temporary, I told myself, my throat tight, but the weight kept growing. One night, I sat curled on my bedroom floor, the darkness pressing in, unable to sleep. The numbers, bills, loans, Brandon's tuition, swirled in my head until dawn broke, gray and unforgiving. Another day, I collapsed at work, my vision blurring from exhaustion. A colleague drove me home, but I was back at my desk the next morning, hiding the tremor in my hands. My doctor warned of early signs of depression, her voice gentle. "You're carrying too much." I nodded, but didn't tell my family. They'd call it weakness. Have you ever missed your own birthday just to keep someone else's lights on? Months passed. Then a year. Then 2. Over $22,000 drained, $980 for the mortgage, $200 for utilities, $150 for Mom's prescriptions. I stopped tracking because the numbers hurt. One rainy evening, I stood in a gas station, digging for quarters to buy milk, my account too low. I'd worked 10 hours, my shoes soaked. My hands trembled. How did I get here? That night, I sat with a cup of tea and opened Dad's banking app, where I sent the mortgage payments. I trusted them blindly. They were my parents. I scrolled, expecting relief. Instead, I found betrayal. The last mortgage payment was 8 months ago. The account showed a $600 smart TV, $300 for Brandon's art supplies. At the top, in red, status, at risk of foreclosure. I'd sent $3,000 after they stopped paying.
Gone.
No explanation. I blinked, refreshed the screen. My hands shook as I closed the app, the rain tapping my window. My throat burned, but I didn't cry. I needed proof. The next morning, I called the bank, posing as a family helper. The representative's voice softened. "No full payment since January. It's in collections." I hung up. It wasn't sadness. It was colder, like my family's foundation had split. They hadn't just taken my money. They'd lied. For months, I joined a book club, desperate for something to hold on to. Margaret, a woman in her 60s, sat across from me. Over coffee, she shared her story. She'd cut ties with her son to protect her mental health. Sometimes survival means saying goodbye, even to family, she said. Her words were a mirror. I should have seen it coming. After weeks of ignoring their calls, I stood at my parents' door, arms full of grocery bags, my heart pounding. It was a gray Sunday, the air thick with rain. I'd worked a weekend shift, my body aching. Drop off groceries. Avoid eye contact. Leave. But that day, something cracked. I let myself in, the smell of old cooking oil and lavender cleaner hitting me. Brandon's video game blared, the floral couch sagging under him. I set the bags on the kitchen table, salmon, vegetables, the 78 crockpot humming. Mom walked in, arms crossed. "Emily," she said sharply, "we need to talk." I paused, a bag of carrots in my hand. "About what?" "What you're sending. It's not enough." My fingers trembled as I set the carrots down. "Not enough." Dad shuffled in, rubbing his shoulder. "You live alone, make good money. We're struggling." Have you ever poured your heart into a home, only to feel it push you away? "I've paid your mortgage for 2 years, I said, my voice low. "Utilities, groceries, prescriptions, the roof repair. And it's not enough." Brandon's voice drifted in. "You're not starving, Em." I turned to him, my 32-year-old brother, who hadn't worked in years. "All you do is take," I said, my voice sharp. "Enough." Mom snapped. "You're disrespectful." My lungs burned. "I'm disrespectful?" I said, my voice rising. "For working 12-hour days while I eat instant noodles? For keeping this house afloat?" Mom's eyes hardened. "If it's such a burden, walk out that door and don't come back." Time froze. The grocery bags sat untouched. The walls, lined with faded photos and VHS tapes, held their breath. I set the last bag on the table. My hands lingered, tracing the plastic. No one spoke. No one stopped me. I looked at Mom, her apron still smelling of cinnamon. At Dad, his boots by the door. At Brandon, who once drew me sunflowers. They were gone. So I stepped away 1 foot, then another, and closed the door, softer than I ever had. Rain soaked my shirt. I reached my car and paused. A neighbor texted later. I heard the yelling. "You did the right thing." I stopped at a cafe and bought a warm pastry, its sweetness a small rebellion. I didn't drive straight home. The rain fell, blurring the streetlights as I pulled into a gas station. My phone felt heavy with their names. I blocked them, not out of anger but necessity, like cutting a rope to keep from drowning. My apartment was small, a 3rd-floor walk-up with creaky floors and a leaky faucet. The hallway smelled of mildew, but it was mine. No one had the keys. No one would knock at dawn. I moved in with 2 suitcases, a folding chair, and a threadbare comforter. For weeks, I ate on the floor. But each morning, I woke to my own alarm. I brewed coffee slowly, no rush. The morning light crept through sheer curtains, dancing on the hardwood. I stood still, listening to nothing. And it was everything. Have you ever found peace in a moment you didn't have to share? I'd spent so long giving that I feared I'd vanish if I stopped. But I didn't. I emerged. Healing was slow, like learning to walk again. One Saturday, I went to a farmer's market, picking out tomatoes and basil just because I wanted them, not because someone demanded a list. The colors, red, green, gold, felt like a gift. In my pottery class, I shaped a bowl that collapsed under my clumsy hands, but when I laughed, the room laughed with me, their applause a soft warmth. One afternoon, I sat by my window, sunlight spilling over my notebook as I wrote my thoughts to Chopin's Nocturnes, something I hadn't done in a decade. Each moment was a stitch, sewing me back together. Sundays became my sanctuary. I walked through Piedmont Park, a book under my arm, watching kids chase dogs. One morning, I bought a small bouquet of daisies, just for myself. I set them in a glass jar, their white petals bright against my windowsill. It was the first time I'd let beauty be mine. Financially, it was tight. $22,000 to my family, $1,200 for rent, $300 for student loans. But without their demands, I saved. Watching $50 grow to $100 felt like a miracle. I stopped flinching at phone buzzes. I stopped apologizing for being tired. One morning, I played a Fleetwood Mac song while eating breakfast, dancing a little just for me. At work, colleagues noticed. "You're smiling more," one said. My boss offered a promotion to senior analyst with a raise that let me buy a dining table. Eating there, with a lavender candle, felt like a victory. At the book club, Margaret became a friend. "You're not alone," she said, her hand on mine. She shared that her son had texted after 4 years, just to thank her for giving him space. Her eyes shone with quiet hope, and I held on to that possibility. One evening, I found an old photo of myself at 10, smiling in a park. I'd hidden it away, afraid of the memories. Now I hung it on my wall, reclaiming that girl who deserved to be seen. The silence was supposed to be peace. Some days it was bright, like sunlight after rain. But other days, when the wind whistled under my windows, I wondered if I'd gone too far. Had I cut off my own roots? 3 months had passed since I blocked their numbers. I hadn't sent money, hadn't called. It was strength, but strength doesn't always feel like triumph. It's sitting on your bed at 2 a.m., wondering if you're the villain. Have you ever walked away and still felt the weight of those you left behind? The voicemails piled up. One night I listened, my finger trembling. "Mom, you'll regret this. That house means everything. Dad, we're out of options. Brandon, you're letting us sink." Not one asked how I was. Their words clung like ash. What if they lose the house? What if I'm the selfish one? I remembered every sacrifice. Birthdays missed, vacations canceled, meals skipped. I remembered crying in the office bathroom after Mom's scolding text. But I also remembered Mom sewing my prom dress, her arthritic hands trembling. Dad teaching me to ride a bike, the scratchy wool of his army jacket against my cheek. Brandon, who drew me a sunflower. One morning, I stared at my bank app, hesitating over a new text from Mom. "We need you." My finger hovered, but I didn't reply. My savings were growing, $500, then $600. Rent was paid. I sat on my balcony, watching a boy fly a paper plane. His mom cheered. They looked safe. I wondered what it felt like to know you'd be caught. I never had that, but I could give it to myself. I unblocked the voicemails, not to respond, but to listen. "Dad, you're all we've got." The words didn't pull me back. I wasn't all they had. I was all they used. A cousin called. "I admired how you held it together," she said. Her voice was a lifeline. Some nights, I think of them, not with anger, but with a quiet ache. I think of Mom, her hands trembling as she sewed my dresses. Dad, working late shifts, his boots thumping at 5:12. Brandon, who once had dreams. They were caught in a cycle I couldn't break for them. My parents' generation believed family was everything. They lived through wars, recessions, when silence was survival. But their lessons became chains I had to unlearn. Maybe one day we'll talk. Not as a fixer, but as people who see each other. But not now. Now I need to breathe. One evening, a letter arrived, slipped under my door in Mom's familiar scrawl. My hands shook as I opened it, expecting another plea. Instead, it was an apology, the first in my life. "We leaned on you too hard, Emily," she wrote. "I see it now. I'm sorry." Her words were heavy, raw, like they'd been carved from years of silence. I sat with them, tracing her handwriting, remembering her humming radio tunes. I felt a release, not of obligation, but of resentment. I didn't write back. I chose to forgive, quietly, from afar, holding my peace like a treasure. My life is blooming. I have a book club where Margaret and I share stories. A pottery class where I shape beauty from chaos. A promotion that let me buy a dining table. Sunday walks in Piedmont Park, where I owe no one my time. I found a drawing, Brandon's sketch of me smiling under a tree. I framed it for the girl I used to be. She deserved to be seen. That girl is still part of me, but now she's free. You don't lose your family when you walk away from abuse. You reclaim your soul. Sometimes I wonder if I walked back to that porch now, would they even recognize the woman I've become? The woman who no longer says yes to survive. The woman who no longer trades peace for approval. If loving them meant losing yourself, you were never the selfish one. You don't owe your worth to what you give away. You deserve love simply because you breathe. If you've ever held a family together so tightly you forgot who you were, I see you. And your story? It matters more than you know. Share it with us. You just might help someone finally say, "Me too." Last week, I opened an email from Susan, a 63-year-old woman in Wisconsin. "Dear Emily," she wrote, "I left my family at 50. Your story reminded me that I'm not cruel. I just chose life. Thank you for helping me feel seen." Her words were a gift, a reminder that we're not alone. If no one said this to you lately, you matter. Your story matters. You're not alone. Not here. Click subscribe if this touched you. Let's heal together, one voice at a time. Loyalty is beautiful, but not when it's one-sided. Emily's story reminds us that family is precious, but so is self-respect. For years, she poured her heart into a household that saw her as a safety net, not a daughter. When she stopped giving, she found silence, not love. Many of us carry the weight of family. We were raised to sacrifice quietly. But Emily teaches us that self-preservation isn't selfishness, it's survival. There's a pain only caregivers know, the ache of being invisible after giving everything. If you're supporting others, ask, is this help building their strength or just their dependence? Set boundaries, offer support with conditions. Seek friends, counselors, or communities to remind you that you're worthy of love for who you are. Pause today. What's one thing you can do for yourself? A walk, a call, a moment to write your story? Your wisdom can light the way. If you've ever held a family together so tightly you forgot who you were, I see you. Share your story with us. You just might help someone say, "Me too."